What's up, guys? Rubin here, and today it's going to be a very casual video. Okay, so I like to call these coffee with Rubens. Okay, so I hope you get a coffee. I hope you sit back, and today what I want to share with you. Okay, so today what I want to share with you is I found an old journal. I wanna show you where I was at, a few years back. Um, in my coaching, whenever I'm talking to my students, there's I tell them that there's so many new tips and shiny objects and apps and all of these different innovative things in the mental health space, okay, or the personal development space, whatever you want to call it. And I always say that journaling is, you only need two things really to heal, in my opinion. A journal, right? You need to be journaling every single day. It's one of the hardest things to get momentum on. It's one of the, you know, everybody stumbles to do it consistently. It's one of the hardest things to do. But there's such deep rewards and benefits when you do. So I say journaling and then internal work, right? Internal reprogramming or introspection or trauma healing, emotional releasing, that type of thing. Okay, so two things. And one of the reasons I think that journaling is such an important thing is because you can look back and you can look back at the thoughts you were having, say, 3, 4 months ago. You can look back at the thoughts you were having back then, the worries you were having back then, the stress you were under, the concerns you had, your fears about the future, right? And you can look back at it, and when you've made a ton of progress, you can look back and say, goodness, I don't even recognize who that person was writing that journal entry, okay? So this is years. This is years old. It's like 2015. Okay, so it's 2015. I want to show you a few things here. So in 2015, if you've been following me for a while, you know that it was, I don't know when it was, but it was like 2010, 2011. I quit my IT job and I was going for, I went back to school. I did a second degree because I wanted to get into medical school. And turned out to be a shit show. It turned out I got too anxious in the interviews. I couldn't express who I truly was. Couldn't pass the med school interviews, right? And so I did, that was extremely depressing because I don't know how many years of work, did a second degree, flawless, just under a 4.0, did all that work to just be disappointed again because of social anxiety, okay? And here's this journal. I remember when I was practicing interviews, right? I had some friends that were in the program. They were helping me out practice for these interviews. And I had some notes in here that I was taking down, and I want to show you. I want to share these with you, okay? Because let's see here. Let's see if I can find you a couple things here. Yeah, right here. Okay. So what you'll see, okay. The reason I want to share this with you is because I want to talk about this idea of implantation, okay? So in the personal development space, they talk about this subconscious mind. They talk about the subconscious mind, or if you look at, any law of attraction, or, a lot of these success channels on YouTube and things, they talk about the subconscious mind, and it's all about the subconscious mind. And there's this thing about implantation, okay, where in your first few years of life, your mind's already programmed and it's very hard to change. It's somewhat true, right? It's not, the problem is that it's not trauma informed, okay? They don't consider trauma, they don't consider traumatic events, they don't consider, neglect, abuse, critical, parenting, bullying, any of these things. They don't consider any of that, okay? But at the same time, it has a lot of merit, okay? So those are your really formative years. And what I want to show you is, how my journal entries reflect that implantation. And essentially what they're saying is that you in the first few 7 years of life, you're so impressionable that you're going to take in all of these voices and programs from your environment, okay? And you don't have a say. You don't have a conscious mind to dictate whether you take that in or not, okay? You don't have a filtering system yet. So everything gets dumped and downloaded into your mind, okay? And I want to show you, demonstrate to you this through these journal entries, okay? So I remember, so I was working through, I was practicing a few interviews with a friend of mine, and I just want to show you how I used to talk to myself. It's really sad. It's really sad. It really breaks my heart to just read this, how I used to treat myself. And so we were doing a couple of practice interviews, and I want to just show you the way, like when I told myself, because my friend, he was saying, don't stop being so fancy and just get to the point, and he was trying to help me out and give me feedback. And I want to see how I internalized it. So if you see over here, it says, stop being fancy, exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. That's the way I was trying to talk to myself. I was like beating myself up. Stop being fancy, okay? Almost like yelling at myself. And there's another point here where, there was this thing I remember in that phase of my life, I was in my early 30s, and I had this thing in my head that I really wanted to sound smart, because all of the people around me, they were using big vocabulary and big words, and I was like, oh my God, I just want to sound smart like these other people. Why can't I sound smart? Okay, and I had this whole thing whenever I would present in front of people, talk in front of people, I just wanted to be smart. I just wanted to sound so smart, okay? And so here, I have it written down because I expressed that to my friend. I was like, I don't think I sound smart. And then he's like, nobody notices. They just want to get to know you. They don't really care if you sound smart or anything like that. And I have it written here, nobody notices your lack of vocabulary except you. And look, I just want to show you what I wrote under that. Get to the fucking point, exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. And it's just crazy, right? Like, look at the way I used to swear in my head at myself, swear in my head, the way I used to talk down on myself, the way I used to treat myself, simply because I got feedback from somebody saying like, hey, he was lighthearted about it. Hey, nobody notices that. But look at what I'm doing to myself. Look at the way I'm internalizing it and speaking to myself. And let's see here. I just want to show you a couple more things. Here. So let's see. Yeah, here we go. Okay. So I remember that on this one practice we were practicing, and he goes, my friend goes, because I was given this manual for medical errors, and I started to try to cite the information from that book and speak about it during our practice. And he's like, dude, you don't need to know that stuff. He's like, why would you know about medical errors? You're not a trained doctor. So why would you know that stuff? You don't have to talk about this stuff, right? And here, once again, I want to show you how I internalized it. So because I got feedback, and it's not necessarily negative or positive, he's just trying to help me out. But the way I internalized it and the way I would try to beat myself up over it, I want to show you this. It says, so essentially I wrote down here, don't fucking bring up medical errors, question mark, question mark, question mark. What do you know about medical errors? Question mark, question mark, question mark. I just want to show you here this at the top, over at the top here. Like, look at the language, look at the exclamation points, look at the question marks, look at the emphasis on just trying to beat myself up into doing better, right? And another one here, like, look at this. It says, says, forget all the bullshit you have learned. Exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. So you get the gist of it, right? You get the gist of it. And, here's one last thing is, there was a question I remember, and it was like, what are 5 words that you would use to describe this kind of a thing? Interview question. And then I remember, I got to 2, 3, and I couldn't remember like the 4th and the 5th or something like that. And then it said, I wrote, my friend's suggestion was like, maybe just, hey, it's all good. You don't have to remember all 5. Nobody's memory works that well. And then I wrote, you could have done 2 or 3, and then kind of got a refresh, asked again, got a refresh of what the questions were, took your time, and then gathered yourself for the next 2. But look at this. Look how much judgment there is. Who remembers 5 words like that? Question. There's 4 question marks there, right? So you can really see, it's like, yeah, it's a bit of a judgmental statement, but you can see how much energy, how much judgment there is. Look at the number of question marks there. It's just crazy. And so you get the idea. You get the idea of how I used to talk to myself, how I used to treat myself. These were in my socially anxious days, right? And so going back to this idea about implantation, okay? So implantation is when I really thought about it, okay? When I was really working on this stuff, okay? When obviously I come into the world, I'm a young kid, and there is, we all know this, there's a time period where you're not talking to yourself like that, okay? Nobody comes into the world with that type of self-talk and that much of an inner critic inside going just going ham on them, okay? Nobody has that, nobody's born with that. That is conditioned. Okay, so then I started to wonder, I was like, when did I start talking to myself like that? And I came across this idea, remember when we talk about the personal development world where they're talking about implantation, right? And you don't have a conscious mind, you don't have a filtering ability, so everything's just getting planted into your mind and downloaded into your mind, and you're just taking it in because you're so impressionable and you don't have the ability to reject anything at that point, right? And it made me realize when I started looking at the way I was talking to myself, I was like, that's my dad's voice. That is 100% my dad's voice. The way he used to talk to me, you stupid, you idiot, you're dumb. You know what I mean? And I realized that what I had done was I simply just internalized it, and I just wasn't aware of the fact that that wasn't my voice. Okay, and there's this other. I remember following this other, this really big name in the, I want to say in the subconscious kind of programming space, and his name's Bruce Lipton, and he was saying, I remember following his work, and he was saying that, within the first 7 years of life, traditional societies, they have this thing where they say, give me the boy until he's 7 years old, and I'll show you the man. Because that's how powerful and impactful this programming is that takes place in the first few years of life. And so I remember when I was really following his work, I was like, that's what's happened here. That is 100% what's happened. Because why would a 7-year-old or an 8-year-old be punishing themselves and criticizing themselves like that? And so yeah, I caught onto the fact that I just had to internalize my dad's voice. Why? Because you got to think about it this way. If at one point you were open and free, and then you took on criticism, okay? So you took on criticism and it was so painful. It's like, yeah, the world, the people in my life, they don't accept me as I am. So what do you have to do? You have to be something else. You have to be something other than you are in order to get acceptance and love and approval from the people in your life, right? So what you do is you shift into this personality or this mask that you wear socially. And so part of wearing that mask, right? Part of that personality you're going to develop is in order to not go through that feeling that you're not okay as you are, okay? So you don't get criticism from the outside world. You're going to take on the voice as your own, and you're going to criticize yourself. Because criticizing yourself, what is it going to do? It's going to make sure you stay small. It's going to make sure you don't take risks. It's going to make sure you don't express freely and put yourself out there again. Because think about it, it's way, way more painful to receive it from other people, from the outside world, than it is to do it yourself, okay? So this is a lot less painful. At least this you can deal with. You can stay small here, keep criticizing yourself, right? Tell yourself, oh, you're not good enough for this and you're not good enough for that. There's something wrong with you, okay? Because you're not so vulnerable to the outside world, okay? And that critical voice, so if we go back, the critical voice that I internalized, right? It's like my dad's voice, you stupid, dumb, idiot, okay? That's the voice that I took on, and I started calling myself those things. You see it in the journal, right? So when I start calling myself those things, right? It's because I'm not aware that that thing was implanted into me. Do you see the thing? I'm not even aware of it. I just think it's who I am. Those are my actual thoughts. But they're not your thoughts. They were implanted into you, okay? There's this idea that not every thought is yours either, okay? And that's why it's very important to be detached from your thoughts all the time. Because if we think about it, that voice was implanted into me, okay? But then look, if I look at my dad, right? There was a time when he was just this young kid, this young, vibrant boy trying to make it in the world, and he was happy and joyous and free. He didn't have that voice either. Okay? So that's not his voice either. Right? And that's the kind of generational aspect here. It wasn't his voice either. And I remember him telling me stories about, going through the school system, and he's born in 1950 from Fiji. Back then, the teachers were like full on hitting the kids, humiliating them, bullying them in front of the class, I remember telling him he'd never amount to anything, you're stupid, you're dumb, okay? So then he internalized those voices, okay? And then you could call them, I guess, perpetrators or whatever, but the people who were doing that to him, they had it done to them. Okay, so there's this huge generational aspect to this anxiety, this self-criticism, this low confidence, this low self-esteem, low self-worth, or lack of self-worth, okay? It's a generational thing. And so you have to understand that those thoughts aren't yours, because you have to be able to detach from them and shift out of them to break and sever that generational pattern. So it's very important, okay? So I want you to ask yourself is, if you have a journal or whatever, you're doing this type of work, it's like, yeah, you're socially anxious, okay? So maybe you get triggered, you go into groups and you feel a little disconnected, or you can't stop thinking about what to say next in a one-on-one conversation. These things happen. These things are happening to you, okay? But the inner criticism, because you experience those things, okay? Where did that come from for you? Whose voice did you internalize, okay? Where did that voice come from? Where did it get implanted from? Where did it get internalized from? Who in your life? Was it the parents, maybe some extended family, siblings? Was it your bullies? Whose voice have you taken on, and are you unaware of that? Are you unaware of the fact that it's not yours? Okay, it's not your voice. Okay, and I remember, I'm gonna wrap up here, but I remember reading or I'm not reading it, but working through this book. It's called The Gentle Path, and it's to overcome addictions and codependency, and clean up your relations, any sort of behavior that you want to change. And so it's the gentle path. It's a 12-step thing. It was by Patrick Carnes, I think was his name. And I remember right away when you go into the book, it started talking about, it's like, oh, what was your childhood like? Okay. And it starts going into trauma and talking about trauma and these different things. And this is how asleep I was. This is how asleep I was back then. Okay. In my head, I said, what the hell does childhood have to do with anything? Because at that time I was like late 20s. I was almost 30 years old. I was like, I'm a grown man. What the hell does childhood have to do with anything? And the answer to that is absolutely everything. It has everything to do with how your life has turned out, the results you're seeing in your life, the experiences you're having in your life right now is absolutely everything to do with it. And I'm sure you know that these patterns, they keep trying to break away from social media. It's like these patterns, they keep reoccurring, and these things keep reoccurring, and you try to break free, and no, you thought you were free, but you're really not, and these things return over and over and over again. Really what that is, that's childhood stuff. Maybe sometimes the teenage years or early adulthood, those things are just coming back over and over again because they're not resolved. Okay. And this last thing here before I end off, I remember this. I was working through another workbook. It was for another support group. Okay. And I remember it was a spiritual, it was a more spiritual group. And I remember they were talking about God. They're like, well, how do you feel about God? And I was like, oh my God, like went through the whole Catholic school system. I do not believe in God. I'm not religious. That word just pisses me off. And so I remember the question, it was like, what was the question? It was, yeah, so the question was basically, how would you describe God? So they're just kind of leaving it. There was a bit more gentle. They didn't force you to believe in it. And it was, how would you describe God? And then I remember I put, God doesn't give a shit. He's distant. He doesn't care. He's not going to save you, and all of these things. Okay. And then I remember the next question was, it was like, it was something along the lines of, do you see how your opinion or the way you see your parents is the way you see God? And it just blew my mind, because I realized that my view of my parents, right? Emotionally distant, don't care, all of these things, that was the way I saw God. So that was the way I saw the world, essentially. So it was a huge thing to connect those dots, because it opened me up to the fact that that's just my belief system about my parents, right? It has nothing to do with the universe. It has nothing to do with spirituality. It has nothing to do with having faith. I am now 100%, I know the universe has my back. Okay, the deepest core aspect of who I am, I know the universe backs it up 100%. It's always going to support that aspect of me, and it's always going to present me with resources, with people, with anything that aspect needs to thrive in this world, and to be able to give my gifts to this world. I know 100%. It's not even a belief system. It's an unshakable faith. I know it. And so that's what I wanted to share with you today, is to just make you aware of this. Awareness is the first step. Like, the way I was talking to myself, that was not me. That was not my voice. Okay, that was something that was implanted to me, and something I just wasn't aware of. I wasn't aware of how it was internalized. Okay? In these moments when I was writing this book, I was writing as the thought. That's 100% me. This is what I think. This is what I believe. Yeah, you're a piece of shit, and you're stupid, and you're dumb, and blah, 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 blah. Okay? So I want you to be aware of that these things, they get internalized and they get passed down. Okay? And it's extremely, extremely important to start to become aware of these voices and these thoughts and these feelings, because they've been internalized, and until you become aware of it, you can't shift the pattern, okay? You can't do better for the next generation, right? Or you can't give your gifts to the people and be of support and be of service and truly help the people around you when there's this really negative self-critical voice going on in your head all the time. So if you're moving through, you're moving through life and just things, you keep hitting that place where like, how the hell did I get here? I keep hitting the wall, things are starting working out. Well, it's because it's been programmed that way. It's been pre-programmed. That's the destiny, that's the destination that's been, if you will, predetermined for you through that conditioning, through that implantation. Okay, and that's why. Okay, but if you can get underneath all of these negative voices and that are rooted in fear and they're rooted in control, and you know, they have this kind of desperate energy to them. Okay, if you can get underneath that, okay, and if you can get underneath to the deeper core of who you are and have that aspect of you fueling your interactions with people, fueling the presentation you do at work, fueling, you know, everything you do throughout the day, okay, that's when the universe is going to meet you halfway, okay? The universe doesn't respond to the negative voices, and if you think about it, they're very self-centered, okay? They only care about you. Just like me, these voices that you saw in here, they only cared about me. They were only about me. Perform better, do better, don't make any mistakes. Okay, but it was a very self-centered voice. It wasn't in the interest of being of service and contributing to anything besides my own ego. Okay, so I hope that really helps you understand how important it is to do this internal work and change these long-standing patterns, okay? Because you cannot help anybody. You cannot change the world until you change yourself, okay? And I hope this really gives you an idea of the scale this is on. This is a huge thing, generationally, humanity-wide. This inner critic, or this lack of self-worth, and this need to shift old dysfunctional patterns so you can actually be in control of your destiny again, okay? In control of your life. It all comes down to getting into touch with who you truly are, because who you truly are, there's no negativity down there. There's no negative voices. It's all love, okay? It's love, it's expansion, it's creativity. That's who you truly are, okay? It's about getting in touch with who you truly are and expanding into the world as that version of yourself, okay? I'm gonna wrap it up there, but if you want any resources or you need a process to start discovering who this authentic self or this authentic side of you who truly is, I'm gonna link, we got resources, right? We got the manual down below. I'm gonna link that below. You can attend the masterclass, that's also below. And we got the Facebook group, we got the Instagram page. So make sure you leverage those resources in order to start the process of moving towards who you truly are. And you're gonna be met with so much resistance along the way. But I promise you, it's gonna be the most gratifying and freeing work that you will ever do in your entire life, okay? So thanks for staying with me. If you're still with me until now, it's been a long video. It's kind of been all over the place, so I appreciate you staying with me. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you very soon. Okay, see you later.